In my work, I like to make things that are very matter of fact. They are what they are. They can only be what they are. It's very clear. But when you look at them, they suggest things. It's a suggestiveness. It takes you elsewhere. It takes you to another place. So I love the idea. I love the idea very much about, say, word paintings being portals. You know, the idea that they could take you from one place to another, or to many places, almost like a time machine, or something like that. You know, I think that's a fantastic notion. I'm not sure that I would ever explain what it is I do to anyone, because I actually don't know what the work's about myself. All I want to do really is in my work is to deliver an intensity of experience. All of the work remains a mystery to me. So I guess I'm trying to make things that achieve the same sense of wonder, you know, that when things I see or things I read. I mean, that's probably what all artists try to do, isn't it? Is to convey that wonderment and surprise and humor. There's a number of these star paintings, about 5, I think now, and each of them are called Ocean. And I guess that's to imply the scale of them, in that they could go on forever. I wouldn't say how I made them, because that would be giving the game away. They are incredibly hard to make. I painted the stars in a looser way first, and then I paint the background, and it's painting around the stars that give them their edges, if you like. So the surfaces are quite agitated, and in all my work, I use relatively small brushes compared to the scale of the painting. And by using small brushes and the small marks they make, it's like I embed time into the surfaces of the paintings. As I build up those surfaces, it's like time itself gets embedded in them. I think when you make art, you're constantly trying to make things accidentally on purpose. What you're trying to do is set up a situation where surprises can happen. I wouldn't say accident, because there's no such thing as accidents in art, you know. For me, you just try to create a way of making something that is both difficult and easy at the same time. It's a difficult thing to explain in a way. And so I use like this very heavy tooth flax canvas, which makes it, of course, quite difficult to make anything that accurate on it. But I insist on my work of great accuracy. All my work has an enormous attention given to it, because I believe that attention is the prayer of the soul. And it's attentiveness, not only in art, but in many other things that you do and you live your life. But attentiveness, to me, is quite close to a kind of spiritual. Art is a very hungry animal. You know, I read an awful lot. I see an awful lot. You know, you have to accumulate. You have to accumulate so much to be able to do something so simple. You know, at the other end, it's you have to gather so much information, and then you do so. So for me, ideas drop into my head like a slide into an old-fashioned, you know, lantern. They kind of just drop in, and then I see the works. Often see the works entirely as a whole, and then my job is then to make them. And of course, they often don't turn out in the end exactly as they did when they drop, but that's because I've made that able to happen. There's also a clue in this painting in that her toenails are painted orange. That, for me, gives it a sense of reality. as if it's something that's real, that she's real. And so it's just a very, very simple thing, but it takes her out of mythology, if you like, and puts her into the real world. So when I come to make one of the figure watercolors, I see them in my head, and that's the size they are because they're inside my head. And then I make them in moments and they're on the paper. And they're quite different to the figures in my paintings, which I sometimes see almost like the watercolor figures are real, and these are the things that they see. So the watercolors work for me when they have a sense of gravity, and that's what gives them a sense of being real on the page. They feel like they sit or they stand or they hold that space in this empty white page. I think I have a world that's mine, and all the different aspects of what I do. These are the signs, these are the things you travel past, these are the trees that you see in the landscape, these are the waters, these are the stars. And the figures, the watercolor figures for me, are the inhabitants of this world. That's how I see them. And they're naked. They walk and move and fuck and hold each other. It's their nakedness, it's that expulsion, if you like, that I'm interested in. My figures are like thoughts. They have the simplicity, I think, of a thought or of a moment. I've been asked in the past, like, how long does a watercolor take? I would get embarrassed saying a few seconds or something, and then I realized that I didn't really know. So when I'm asked now, I say that they take moments. The difference between my watercolors in that they take moments is compared to the paintings that can take many weeks. And that sense of time, though, seems to be a very important part of what I do. I've also realized that a very important part of what I do is that really I paint the things that are in between things. I think if you look at my watercolor drawings, or it's really the shapes between things that seems to be how they're created and how they're made. In my gouaches, the abstract gouaches, for instance, it's the space between the shapes. I see all my figures as if they've been washed up on a beach somewhere. I don't necessarily feel that they do inhabit my world, but I feel that they've been excluded from others. I think there's a sense of the unbearable lightness of being in them. But I also like the expression, as sweet as gravity. In the sense that gravity can be sweet, that it ties you to things, that it draws you towards things. I like things that they are the size they are because there's a reason for it. And in my large works, for instance, it's because they're made the size that I can reach out and hold them and turn them around. So they actually are, the large ones are my width. And then the smaller works I make, like these ones, which are 12 by 10 inches, for me, they're like book size, they're head size. I see no real difference between works that have things in them, figurative works, if you like, and abstract things. I just don't, for me, there's no real difference. The only thing I would say is that in most cases, all the figurative works I make up. And all the abstract works I make, I've usually seen in the real world something. This painting is called Snow at Night. And it is meant to achieve that kind of miraculous thing you have as a child when it's snowing at night and you look up and the big white things are floating down to you. And again, that sense of holding of gravity all of a sudden, as if the world had slowed down. But this painting I took from, it was a really early animated cartoon I came across, where they were doing that very simple thing of just filming the same thing over and over coming down. It was probably just done in it's basically the same drawing going up and down and up and down. And I thought it was really beautiful in its simplicity. This is not a realistic looking painting. I like things that are signs for things. I think that's why I like medieval art so much, because I like the artist has found a way through a kind of stylization. He's found a symbol for something. This represents this. And sometimes they can feel more intense than it would be if you made a realistic, image of what that is that you want to show. There is nothing hidden away in any of the work I make. Everything is on show, if you like. They're not layers. They're made in a very, very matter-of-fact way. There is an element of humor in them. I think there's a strong sense of almost a Buster Keaton type humor in them. You get the feeling that something terrible is going to happen at any moment. Things feel like they're maybe on the edge. They're just on the edge of a slip-in or doing a pratfall or something like that. Originally, when I first thought of Blue Boy, I wanted him to be like an airplane, which is why his arms are flung out, and they're far longer than they should be anyways. And I've made lots of paintings where there's often a figure tumbling or descending, as if they're falling out of the sky. I think with Blue Boy, you're not sure if he's levitating or flying or gliding or in one place. Often, when I meet people for the first time and they've known the work, but they don't know me, they say, "You're much older than I thought you were going to be." And I never know how to take it, whether, is that just rude or does my work look somehow, young? But I also kind of understand it as well, because I hope that the work does have a kind of, not a sense of youth, but a sense of being born, newly born all the time. And there's been many pathways, hasn't there, in art? And one is the pathway of a kind of dark cynicism, irony. And there's another path that's, again, like Pasolini. It has things that are dark and maybe evil about things, but it also contains this great sense of beauty, of shining a torch into something. And so I think I like to be on that path, really, if there is one. In my paintings, what I was trying to do is create visions. And in that way that you think of a vision being instantaneous and like a moment, for me, the idea of creating something that has the intensity of, say, of a vision that's also held there forever. When I was very tiny, my first real memories was that I thought the world was flat. And I remember being very strongly affected by this, that the world was flat and that at the edges, you would go off the edge. And it may have had to do with my father was in the Navy then, and so I often would wake up dreaming of this. Every work that you make kind of comes with its own rules, Like it has a set of laws or rules that it has to abide by. And then you have to make the decision, am I going to break these? Or do I go along with it? It's a very strange thing that you do. It's like you set your own, each work it's like its own courtroom. You set the parameters of what the logic is going to be. Certain of my gouaches gravitate towards each other, and I make them and I put them up on the wall and I put them into grids and things like that, and they seem to then have a dialogue with each other, which I really enjoy. I've always hung the gouaches in this way, and then I would often get quite upset when they got dispersed because I liked them in these groups. And so I decided to put my foot down and say, no, these are going to be the groups. They are like films in a way. I give all of them a title because then they have an identity. The reason I enjoy gouache very much is that it's the absolute opposite of making watercolors. Watercolor is imbued with light, it's transparent, it's ephemeral, it's like the lightest medium known to man. And then gouache the pigment is held within its binder in a much different way, and so it's dense and it's heavy and it's physical, and it absorbs light, which gives it that kind of, gives the colors that intensity. And so it's a very different way of putting color down onto paper. Words especially, they all have a different weight, and it's not necessarily that they feel heavier, that they're better or more important, it's just that they have they're going to be expressed in a different way. And so some text finds itself in real voices, so characters in the films will say something, or they'll appear in the gouaches in a much smaller way, in a more delicate way. Some texts, they remain in my mind for a very long time, and to appear in a painting, they have to have a certain weight. And I thought about Hearts of Glass for a very long time. For me, it's the Herzog film. And it was just putting that S on hearts that changed everything for me. And that maybe it meant all hearts. You know, that every heart was made of glass. I think all my work is about fragility. Well, if truth be told, I'm actually just a very frustrated novelist, you know. So, I suppose I'm trying to make things visually, for me, is the way I feel when I'm reading a great novel, that I'm inside it, and it's hard to get out of it. Coming out of a great novel is like rising to the surface, isn't it?